So my name is Chris Gray. I am the president and owner of Griffen Mechanical LLC.
Well, with TNCP, with our state program, I started in 2008, I believe, as just an examiner. And then I became a team leader. I was that for a number of years. While I was a team leader, I purchased my business in 2010. I took my own organization through our 4-tiered system. We won in 2018, Griffen Mechanical, level 4. I think right after that, I went on the panel of judges. I recently rolled off. My term expired, so I'm now on the board of directors. In the case of my business, so I purchased it was a distressed business, it was a failing business. The previous owner, who just retired last year from Griffen Mechanical, he had it for 10 years. 2008 was a very bad economic year. It was bad for him and he never recovered. So at that point, I knew that this framework, I'd seen it transform businesses, and the question I had was, could you use it to turn a business around? And I literally put my money where my mouth was and purchased the business, and we did. We were able to. So for me, the value was clear, and it was clear to my employees. Probably it was I'll call it a 3-year turnaround, but in that time period, we went through our level 1 and level 2 assessment. And they saw the immediate impacts of it, and I saw the immediate impacts of it, and what was a non-viable business became a viable business, and those employees didn't lose their job. I think when I bought the business, we had 6 employees, including the previous owner. Of those original 6, it's 14 years later, 4 are still with the business, and the other 2 retired, including the previous owner. So in a small town like Dixon, we're in Dixon, Tennessee. This is on the outskirts of Nashville. It's rural, it's very blue collar. They went from having a place to work, they potentially would have had to go elsewhere into Nashville to find a job, and they didn't have to. They were part of that rebuild, and it's probably I know it is their most proud achievement. I'm the 4th longest tenured employee of my own business. They've been here longer than me, and they repeatedly say that. They can't fathom where we were and now where we are today and the opportunities that they've been provided. Well, in the initial stages, it was an introduction of the framework, starting with the basics and organizational profile. What was probably the light bulb moment, the aha moment, was after our level 1 assessment team came, and here at TNCP, they're very collaborative, very friendly. They walked out the door, and it was like a whole energy took over. And so from the next couple years, when I'm putting processes in place, I couldn't put them in place quick enough. My employees were asking me, hey, can we get this captured? This works. We don't want to keep banging our heads against a wall. We don't want to keep making the same mistakes. I think when it comes to the actual framework itself, it was a very on the ground, tangible evidence that it works. And I think if HVAC technicians and plumbers can understand it, then anybody can. So I think that was the best part of it. Later on, even up to level 4, it had already done its magic for us. And then it became more of a, hey, let's go get this. I think it was the level 2 assessment. All right, so I did my undergrad at Penn State on an ROTC scholarship. I was an officer in the Army. I went back, got my MBA. The level 2 team came in category 2. Their feedback was essentially that we did not have a strategic planning process. And I was like, are you kidding me? This is what I do. This is my jam. It's my bowl of rice. However, took a step back and I was like, okay, actually, I think they're right. What I had was a lot of tactical action plans, I was trying to keep the boat afloat, but I wasn't planning past 6 months. I kind of couldn't. That's my argument. That's my defense. But the truth was, I didn't have a strategic plan. So it was kind of a pain point. I actually threw the feedback report across the room. I was like, what? But they were correct. And so what's interesting about that is that I set out to create a strategic planning process that combined all of the elements that are required in the framework and all of the best practices that are out there, but that could also be easily understood by blue-collar tradespeople. And I did. So when we got our level 4, that was one of the things that was pointed out as one of our best practices for a small business. So we take some very complex concepts like a SWOT analysis. It's not that complex, but it can get arduous. These sessions can have teams at organizations that take weeks. Well, how do you do that quickly, efficiently with a smaller group of people who maybe don't have that level of education? That's probably the one that sticks out because we still use that strategic planning process to this day. There's a book that came out a couple years ago called Traction, which is a lot of the elements that we had put before the book came out. And I was like, well, maybe if I'd have written a book, I'd be doing that. But no, that was definitely, it was a turnaround point, and it was a feedback comment. There was probably 6 feedback comments over our journey that completely transformed us and just set us in the right direction at that time within the business. I found the value of being an examiner. It was learning the criteria. It was learning the framework. It was learning how to evaluate organizations. It was going into organizations and seeing best practices and being able to identify them. I found the value as a team leader, similar, but also now guiding others through that process. In TNCP, we say right around year 3, this light bulb comes on. It fully makes sense. It makes sense previous to that, but you do have to go through a few iterations to truly understand. I found the value of the judge really being the panel of judges itself. These are the people who know organizations and Baldrige through and through. They are the smartest people I've ever sat around with. So when the panel of judges meets, for me, it's almost like continuing education and motivation, which is just interesting. You come out of, it's a pretty arduous session. It can be, depending on the number of applicants and how high I think it's the first step is just to start. It really is. The organizational profile, if you cannot answer those questions, so your organization or your employees, they cannot answer those questions, that you aren't operating as well as you think you are, period. So at the very beginning, start with that. I would recommend picking one of the categories that you think applies to your organization best. Don't try to tackle the whole thing at once. When I bought my business, the first thing I had to do was retain my employees, or I had essentially purchased nothing. Because again, I'm not from the trades. I can't do this work. I could not pick up my tool belt and go finish these jobs. I needed them. So that was the most important category for a number of years. It's still important, but that was the most important, the key. And then we went on to customers. So I would just encourage them, if they don't want to bite off the whole thing, then don't. Just pick one little area and just answer the questions. It's really simple. If it asks for a process and you cannot demonstrate that process, show us where it is, a picture perhaps. You might not have a process. You probably have an anecdote. If multiple people in the organization can't point to that process or know where to find it, you may have a process. It's probably not deployed, and so on and so forth. It's simple, but it's hard. Most of the important things are simple and hard. But that's where I would encourage them. It is a neutral, unbiased way to look at your business. And there's a lot of volunteers who are giving a lot of their time to support it. So it's not as if there's a lot of there's not a lot of money going into the Baldrige volunteers or any at all. For most people, it costs them money. They do it because they believe in it, and they believe in it for a reason. It does work. My business was fully transformed because of it, and we continue to be. My biggest frustration is that so few people know about it and that they're not engaging in it.